Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive. This time we're looking at an audio source that digs into Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's right. And what's really interesting is how it frames it.
How so?
Well, it's not just about, the fourth Thursday in November.
Right, not just the holiday itself.
Exactly. It's presented much more as a fundamental part of being, like a continuous thing.
Okay, a way of being, so more than just a tradition.
Definitely. The source talks about it as a spiritual practice, something tied really closely to community and, interestingly, to sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Okay, that's not usually the first word that springs to mind with Thanksgiving.
I know, right?
Mm.
So our aim here is really to unpack what the source means by that. What does it mean to live thankfully all the time, according to this view?
All right, let's get into it. It sounds like there are two main threads the audio pulls on.
Mm-hmm.
First, this idea of the Christian community
Mm-hmm.
as a spiritual house
Yeah.
made of living stones.
Yeah, that's the first big concept, comes from First Peter.
And the second?
The second is this idea of offering spiritual sacrifices and specifically focusing on the sacrifice of praise, of giving thanks.
Okay. Living stones and spiritual sacrifices. Yeah. Definitely sounds like we're going beyond turkey and cranberry sauce here.
We are. And what really jumps out is how these two ideas are linked right from the start in the source material.
How so?
Well, that metaphor you mentioned, the living stones from 1 Peter 2.5, being built into a spiritual house or a temple.
Right.
The source argues this isn't just, nice poetry. It's saying something fundamental about what Christianity is. It's community, inherently.
That image, living stones, it's really vivid, isn't it?
It is.
And the audio apparently really hammers this home, that it's about being a community, almost like a family.
Yeah, and it uses that analogy you brought up earlier, the brick.
Ah, right. The single brick.
What good is it on its own?
Not much. You might stub your toe on it, like the audio says, but it doesn't build anything.
Exactly, but you put those bricks together.
Then you get a structure, a house, a home.
Right. And this isn't just a simple picture. The source actually points to Romans 12.5.
Okay, what does that say?
It says, so we, being many, are one body in Christ and individually members one of another.
Members one of another.
Yeah, and the key phrase there, according to the source, is mutually dependent.
Mutually dependent. Okay. So it's stressing that faith isn't supposed to be a solo act.
Not at all. It's about connection. The speaker in the audio puts it very directly.
What do they say?
Something like, you are a part of me. I am a part of you. You are dependent upon me. I'm dependent upon you.
Wow. That's pretty strong language about how linked people are supposed to be in this community.
It really is. It suggests your spiritual health sort of affects mine and vice versa.
And the flip side of that, what happens if someone tries to isolate themselves?
Well, the audio suggests, quite starkly actually, that if you try to go it alone, you risk becoming a stumbling block.
A stumbling block.
Yeah. It ties into that, common desire we all have for fellowship, for belonging somewhere.
Right. The need to be part of a group.
The source basically says that connection isn't just a nice to have, it's foundational.
It really paints a picture of this spiritual house needing every stone, every person to be connected for the whole thing to be strong.
Exactly. If stones are missing or just sitting off by themselves.
The whole structure is weaker.
Right. And the audio even makes this point. Maybe instead of looking for some big, flashy ministry,
Yeah.
maybe just being there, being truly connected in the community, that's actually the most important thing we could do. Maybe that's the ministry.
It's a challenging thought, just showing up and being connected.
It is. And that leads into the next part, this idea of priesthood.
Okay.
It brings up that same verse, again, 1 Peter 2.5, and highlights the phrase, a holy, dedicated, consecrated priesthood.
Now, priesthood, that might sound a bit formal or distant for some people listening.
Yeah, I get that. But the audio explains the root, the Latin pontifex.
Which means?
Bridge builder.
Ah, okay. Bridge builder.
And obviously, the source presents Jesus Christ as the ultimate bridge, between God and humanity.
Right.
But it doesn't stop there. This bridge-building idea also applies to how we relate to each other.
Through the commandment to love one another.
Exactly. So this priesthood has a very real relational side to it, too. We're meant to be bridges for each other, in a sense.
Okay, so we're a community like living stones and also a priesthood, bridge builders.
That's the framework, and that sets up the discussion about these spiritual sacrifices in the New Covenant.
Right, you mentioned sacrifices earlier. This is different from the Old
It's
Testament.
very different according to the source. It draws a clear contrast with the Old Covenant's emphasis on, well, blood sacrifices.
So if we're this priesthood now, what are sacrifices?
The audio lays out 3 specific ones.
Okay, what's the first?
First is offering our bodies as a living sacrifice. That's from Romans 12, verse 1.
A living sacrifice. What does that mean in practice?
The speaker clarifies it's not like a one-off dramatic thing. It's called a reasonable service. It's more like a daily commitment.
A daily thing.
Yeah, like saying, Father, I give you my life today. It's about consciously dedicating your whole self, your everyday existence to God.
Presenting our whole being.
Okay. And then linked very closely to that is the second one.
All right.
It's from Romans 6.13, offering the instruments of our bodies as instruments of righteousness.
Instruments of our bodies, like my hands, my eyes.
Exactly that. This is where it gets super practical. It's about the conscious choices we make with our parts.
Okay, give me some examples from the audio.
So dedicating our mouths to speak righteously, building people up instead of tearing down. Dedicating our eyes to see maybe with compassion instead of constant criticism.
Like a challenge.
It is. And our ears being mindful of what we're taking in, what we listen to.
Gossip, maybe?
Yeah, the speaker actually touches on that directly, how sometimes we might dress up gossip as a prayer request.
Ooh. Yeah, I can see that happening. Pray for so-and-so. You won't believe what they did.
Exactly. The real intention might just be to tell the story, so it's about examining those motives.
And hands and feet, too.
Yeah, dedicating our hands to do righteous things, our feet to walk, in righteous paths. It's about aligning our physical actions with our stated beliefs.
So offering our whole selves daily, and then consciously choosing how we use our specific body parts for good.
That's the gist of the first 2 spiritual sacrifices.
Okay. And the third one, you said this ties back to Thanksgiving.
It does, directly. The third one is offering the sacrifice of thanksgiving and praise. It references Hebrews 13.15 and Psalm 50.15. This is really where that idea of Thanksgiving as an ongoing way of life comes sharply into view.
So it's not just feeling grateful, but actively doing something, like speaking.
Precisely. It's about using our words, our lips, as a constant act of worship and offering. Makes you think, doesn't it? About just everyday conversation. Are there missed opportunities there? And what's fascinating is the connection the audio makes to the Old Testament peace offering.
How does that connect?
Well, Jesus' sacrifice is seen as fulfilling that peace offering. And then we, as this royal priesthood, are called to offer this sacrifice, thanksgiving, alongside that.
So what exactly is the sacrifice of praise?
The audio defines it as the fruit of lips that thankfully acknowledge and confess and glorify his name.
The fruit of lips. Okay.
And the speaker is really emphatic here. The praise and the thanksgiving are the sacrifice.
Right. You said that earlier. It's not that you sacrifice something else in order to praise.
Exactly. The words, the verbal expression of gratitude, is the offering itself.
Got it. And this isn't just for Sundays or, special occasions.
No, not according to this source. It's described as continuous. Phrases like certainly and at all times, constantly and at all times are used.
Constantly. Wow.
Yeah, it lines up with that verse in 1 Thessalonians 5.18, give thanks in all circumstances.
Well, this is God's will for you.
Right. And the audio clarifies, which I think is important, it doesn't mean being thankful for the bad stuff happening.
Right. That wouldn't make sense.
But rather, in the middle of whatever circumstances you find yourself in, good or bad, you can still offer verbal thanks. Find something to be thankful for.
Find something even in the difficulty. Okay.
And there's this quote from Hosea, chapter 14, verse 2. It's really striking.
What does it say?
Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all our iniquity, accept what is good, and we will render to you the calves of our lips. Some translations say, pay with bulls the vows of our lips.
Wow. The calves of our lips. So our words are like the animal sacrifice.
That's the direct parallel the speaker draws. Our words of thanksgiving are the offering we bring, like laying something physically on an altar.
That really elevates the simple act of saying thank you, doesn't it?
It does, and it leads the speaker in the audio to wonder, are thanks often just perfunctory? Matter of fact, offhanded.
Even things like saying grace before meals.
Yeah, even then. How much actual intention and heartfelt gratitude is behind the words we use? That's a question the listener is meant to grapple with.
It's definitely making me think about my own expressions of thanks.
Good. And then the audio moves into the why. Why is this ongoing sacrifice of praise so important?
Okay, what's the motivation?
Ultimately, it all comes back to understanding God's love.
How so?
It points to Isaiah 57, verse 19, where God says, I create the fruit of the lips, peace, peace to the far and to the near, and I will heal them.
I create the fruit of the lips.
The implication is that our very ability to offer this thankful praise isn't something we just muster up ourselves. It's actually a gift from God, a result of His grace, His glory working in us.
So even the ability to thank Him is a gift from Him.
That seems to be the idea. And then it goes deeper into God's nature.
Okay.
The speaker really emphasizes God doesn't need us. He didn't need anything before creation. He was and is completely self-sufficient.
Right. He existed alone, complete in Himself.
Yeah, and it references John 17, where it talks about Jesus being the object of the Father's love before the foundation of the world.
Before anything else existed, there was love within the Godhead.
Exactly. So the point is, God didn't create us because He was lonely or lacking something.
He created us because He chose to. He willed it.
Precisely. And He loves us not because He has to or because we're inherently lovable, but because He chooses to love us. He wills to love us.
That's almost incomprehensible, that kind of unearned, unrequired love.
It is. And according to the audio, understanding that grasping even a little bit of the profound, freely given love, that's the ultimate reason why we respond with this sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving.
It's the only appropriate response to such a gift.
That's how the source presents it. It's the natural outpouring of a heart that's beginning to understand the depth of that love.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up, pull the threads together.
Sounds good.
This deep dive, based on the audio, suggests Thanksgiving isn't just a holiday. It's a way of being.
Right, a continuous state.
And it's rooted in being part of this interconnected community, this spiritual house made of living stones. We're mutually dependent.
Mm-hmm. Can't do it alone.
And as part of this community, we're called to be a priesthood, bridge builders, offering spiritual sacrifices.
Which aren't animal sacrifices anymore, but involve offering our whole lives, our bodies.
The specific ways we use our eyes, ears, mouths.
Right. And crucially, offering the fruit of our lips, the audible, intentional sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving.
And doing that constantly, not just now and then.
Constantly. And all of this flows from trying to understand God's immense, almost overwhelming love for us, which He gives freely, not out of need.
So true Thanksgiving, from this perspective, is living in community and constantly verbally expressing gratitude because of that love.
That captures it really well. It's an ongoing practice, an ongoing response.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with something to think about, I guess.
Yep.
How might things change if you really leaned into that idea? Consciously seeing yourself as part of that interconnected community, one of those living stones, and then intentionally looking for opportunities throughout your day to offer those audible words of thanks. Not just feeling it, but saying it.
As a deliberate sacrifice of praise.
Yeah. How could that shift your perspective, your connections with others, maybe even your connection with the divine? What kind of words are you actually offering day to day?
Are they just routine, or are they that intentional fruit of the lips?
Something to definitely reflect on.